And I really thought I would just get a sort of, that sort of kind of wink nod kind of thing. And I said, "What is going on here?" You know, and this person looked at me like I was a, moron, and said, "She hates his guts." And I think that's the understanding of people around him. And
she actually hates
yeah,
his
she
guts.
doesn't want to be there. She doesn't want to have anything to do with this. This is just a complete arrangement. And this, and yet another person said, when I broached this subject, said that when she is around, she's treated like a guest.
So when she turns up at the White House, she's treated as if she's a...
She stood at that press conference, perfectly composed, perfectly dressed, and she said 7 words that made everyone in the White House go silent. Not because of what she said, because of what she didn't say. Because behind that measured tone and those cold eyes was a message so loaded, so dangerous, that even her own husband had to pretend he barely heard it. And the people who know this marriage best, the insiders, the aides, the lawyers, they'll tell you exactly what that message was. She's not just threatening to walk, she's threatening to talk. For over 2 decades, the Trump marriage has been one of the most scrutinized arrangements in American political history. On the surface, the designer gowns, the carefully orchestrated appearances, the stoic face at every rally. But strip that back, and what you find is something far more chilling than a bad marriage. What you find is a woman who has been quietly building leverage. And now, she's starting to use it. Melania Trump does not live in the White House. That's not speculation. That's fact. The overwhelming majority of her time is spent in New York City. Insiders confirm she and Donald do not share a bedroom. One close aide, when pressed on the reality of this marriage, didn't wink or hedge. They looked the journalist dead in the eye and said, she hates his guts. When she does appear at the White House, staff treat her like a guest, not the First Lady. A guest. And it gets darker, because at Mar-a-Lago, same story. Separate wings, her parents relocated nearby. She essentially built her own orbit, parallel, separate, deliberately removed. But here's the question no one in mainstream media will ask out loud. If this has always been the arrangement, why is she making noise now? Why that press conference? Why those specific words? Stay with us, because the answer involves a name everyone already knows, and it changes everything. Jeffrey Epstein. She said she barely knew him, said it publicly, defiantly, on camera. But here's what the record shows. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were extraordinarily close through the late 1990s into the early 2000s. The exact years Melania entered this world. Met Trump in 1997, married him in 2005. That window of time, those specific years, are the ones she's now...
So she's trying to do what Meghan Markle wanted to do a little bit when she was in London, got married, thought that she would be able to run a sort of company alongside being a royal. Now, you can't do that in the UK. The Queen said no, they moved away.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good parallel here. And it's also also seeing the same value. Right. I'm a famous person.
Yep.
I'm a super famous person.
Yep.
How do I monetize that?
Exactly. That's exactly what it feels like's going on. She is famous. She has a look, and she might be able to capitalize on it. And this is a lost opportunity. But the problem is you really can't capitalize on it while you are the First Lady in the White House, which was the issue that Meghan had. You can't do it if you're also being paid by the royal family and that's the platform.
Right. So Meghan and Harry decided to separate.
Analysts who watched that press conference read it the same way. This Epstein stuff is your problem. You got us into this. Congress should talk to the victims. In plain language, investigate him, not me.
Paid, well, it was 40 million for the Amazon documentary, Melania the movie, and she got, we think, 28 of that. And then there was an extra 35 million spent in marketing it. So again, money that normally a first lady, if you think of Hillary, if you think of Laura Bush, if you think of Michelle Obama, published books which were very successful, but after they'd left the role of first lady. So she's actually monetizing it while she's in office. And she may well have looked at Meghan and thought, well, Meghan and Harry got a big Netflix deal.
The Amazon documentary is supposedly just the first of a whole series of things that Amazon is going to finance and platform.
Oh,
That's not a wife defending her husband. That's a chess move. That is a woman with information, signaling exactly how far she's willing to go. One journalist who wrote about her Epstein connections received a $1 billion lawsuit threat from Melania's legal team.
The spot was they had selected the spot for her. She was going to be one of the headliners, and they could not get her to commit. And then she wouldn't do it. And they had to cajole her to actually even appear. And then her terms for appearing, and she sat in the VIP box on the last date, was she would only come out into the box after Trump had left. She would not sit next to him.
so interesting. So she came, but she did come out and embrace him when he was on the stage. And he looked incredulous to see her. Everybody remarked on it. He was kind of like, oh, she's here. He looks like he is intimidated by her.
They're now countersuing and pushing for discovery, which means prenuptial agreements, depositions under oath, a full accounting of those late 1990s years.
Night then wanders off one way, she goes off another way.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's not another scenario, if you think about it, to say, okay, this is a marriage that has that in which on some level or other each spouse is supportive of the other, that a spouse fills a need for the other. I mean, it just doesn't. All of the measures of any kind of measures of a conventional marriage are just not there.
And they don't appear to have much intimacy.
They
I mean,
do
of all
not.
kinds of
No,
intimacy.
they certainly not. But get back to the idea of the threat, because that becomes. I mean, it's a weird thing. It almost becomes a kind of a national security issue. It's always, your subject. I mean, in security terms, it's always, are you blackmailable? Is there information out there that your enemies could use? What if your enemy is your wife? If your wife is saying,
that's so interesting.
If your
and
wife
if she's
is saying, you're gonna do the following.
What if your enemy is your wife? And you said she could be a potential landmine. What are the things that are going to...
That her press conference told the world to forget about. Meanwhile, Melania is building her own empire in real time. A reported $40 million Amazon documentary deal. Her own separate spokesperson.
He stops being friendly with Jeffrey Epstein around 2004, 2005,
Exactly.
which we've discussed. She says that she wasn't involved with Jeffrey Epstein, barely knew Jeffrey Epstein, and yet we know that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were incredibly close friends through that whole period.
Exactly. So what is that? What is she exactly saying? As I said, I think that she's saying that's your problem. And don't put it on me. You better protect me in this.
A brand strategy that mirrors exactly what Meghan Markle attempted, except Melania isn't leaving.
The threat goes to the Epstein of it all. And I certainly read that news conference. Among the many possibilities of which there's endless speculation about, I read it as a threat.
And as a threat to him.
Yeah. You know, first thing it was, you're not going to pin this Epstein stuff on me. This Epstein stuff is your problem. You got us into this.
And Congress should talk to the victims.
Yes, which to me read Congress should investigate you, my husband, the president. And it also was a kind of thing. She opened up the one area that I think that Donald Trump is exquisitely vulnerable on, which is that period in the 1990s, early 2000s. You know, a period of
She's monetizing the role from inside it. She knows this window is finite. She knows the leverage only works while he's in power, and she is cashing every single chip she has. There are photos, there are emails, there is an entire period of time that her own press conference told you not to look at. And the one journalist pursuing this in court says the case is moving forward. A federal judge will rule. Depositions could be ordered. And Melania Trump, the woman who barely shows up, who turned away from a kiss at the inauguration, who refused to sit next to her husband at the convention.
Melania Trump threatened me with $1 billion lawsuit because I talked about her connection with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And I'm not the only one she has threatened. She threatens almost on an industrial scale anybody who makes this connection. I received a letter. If you don't retract, we're going to sue you for $1 billion. This was ridiculous. First thing, nothing that I said could be remotely construed as libelous. That's number one. Number two, never before in the history of the American presidency has a first lady and her husband sued journalists for saying anything, not to mention perfectly reasonable things. So I turned around in consultation with my lawyers. I have a long time relationship with First Amendment lawyers because I've been doing this for a long time. And their view was that this
could be compelled to speak under oath.
Judge to do is to authorize discovery so we can prove that she lives in the state of New York. And that would involve, among other things, getting access to the Melania Trump and Donald Trump prenuptial agreement.
So interesting. And of course, it's been supported by many, many, many people, many of you out there, hopefully listening and watching this.
More than 25,000 people have made small dollar contributions to this lawsuit. We've raised almost $1 million. It gives us the wherewithal to pursue this suit and to get Melania Trump, and she would have to testify. She would have to give a deposition under oath. All of her friends, associates would have to give a deposition, and we would specifically focus on that one period, the late 19.
So here's what nobody in Washington wants to answer. If the woman closest to the most powerful man in the world genuinely hates his guts, what exactly does she know? And what would she do with it?
The White House.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really central part of this story. The mystery of Donald Trump, how he became the president, why he became the president again. What is this whole mysterious construct in which some people in the country see him as a completely transparent and corrupt, unserious, unfit person, and another part of the country sees him as some ideal, even an ideal family man.
And